Hey, welcome to the My Inner Struggle podcast. I'm Laura.
Hi, I'm Julie.
This is
We're
fun.
switching it up today. I know.
Yeah. So, how was your weekend, Julie?
Mine was good. Mine was good. It was well, I went to a turkey tray, as you know, and I didn't win a single thing. People at my table won, which is always nice. But I didn't win anything. And it's so funny because a friend of mine has another turkey tray that she put on Facebook. She's like, "Oh, I'm interested in this." And I was like, "Well, I wasn't such the biggest
Yeah,
loser last
see,
time, maybe." But
maybe.
yeah, it's hard to justify, because they're expensive when you count in all of the tickets and the
Right. And then
50/50s.
you
And
get carried away, right?
you do, yeah, because you're like, oh, if I just buy five more tickets, I'm sure I'll win something. No, no, you won't. But it was fun. I mean, we had a good time, but it's always more fun when you bring home something. But
Yeah,
anyway,
anything.
yeah,
Wouldn't even
anything,
matter,
anyway.
right?
But how was your weekend?
It was good, actually. I spent a lot of time in my book, quite
Nice.
honestly, and I have made great strides in that. So it's been really exciting. It's been truly a healing process. And I think I finally am there, like
Nice.
in so many ways. And so I'm really excited about that. And then on Sunday, I took the kids to the beach for the day, and that was super fun. We did a little exploring, on some trails or whatever. And
How was the weather?
it was nice, actually.
Yeah.
It was sunny.
Mhm.
The wind was a little chilly, like when we were sitting like oceanside, but when we were, like hiking on the dunes or whatever,
Yeah.
it was pretty warm, quite honestly. Yeah,
Nice.
but it was a
Yeah.
good time. It was a lot of
Nice.
fun. Yeah.
Excellent. Very nice. So,
Um, yeah.
10th episode. 10th
10th
episode.
episode.
It's crazy. I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
Yeah, and it's kind of neat that we're doing it this way today. We've wanted to experiment this a little bit before. Obviously, we're not together, and I miss you greatly. But it's kind of nice to be able to see your face like this,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this week we were talking about relationships.
We are.
Yeah.
All
So
different all different types of relationships.
right.
Yeah.
So was there anything in particular, because this was your suggestion, was there anything in particular that you were thinking of when you thought of this topic?
So actually, yes. And I held my question for you for your coach's hat.
Great.
Because somebody just over the last few days, I was trying to I was trying to fix a relationship between two people, and playing devil's advocate for both of them, and I was kind of being the mediator. And somebody had said to me, it's not your job to decide what kind, if any, relationship there is to be, right?
Hmm.
So, how do you feel about that kind of a statement, or what are you thinking? Because relationships are difficult. So you have sibling relationships, you have, parent child, you have spouse relationships, and, as a doer, I want to make sure that kind of everybody in my life gets along.
Well,
But
and you're not
it's
just a
tough.
doer, you're a fixer,
Right,
right? So you want
right.
everybody to feel good and yeah. And so like I guess I am that, but I think through time and through um, going through those kinds of like relationship things, and maybe it's partly going through my divorce too, quite
Yeah,
honestly, is that um, you can't be the fixer. You can't always be the fixer,
yeah.
but it's cool to offer your perspective. You just
Mhm.
can't set an expectation for either side. Um, but I'll give you an example. When I was getting divorced and after I was divorced, my ex-husband and my oldest kind of were butting heads. And it was difficult. It was very difficult at certain times. And I, 5 years ago, I can remember standing in my office at work and, him, in that resentful moment or whatever, saying like, well, I'm sorry, I'm not like perfect like you, but they're just simply not, speaking the same language. And at the time, I was trying to suggest to him, like, why don't you guys do something one on one together so that you can
Me
be on an
too.
even playing field and sort of talk it out, and so I was encouraging him to do something with her, which, seems like the right thing to do, right? Seemed harmless. You're encouraging
Yeah.
togetherness, right? And so they did. They went and they did this painting class, and everything, seemed fine. Only when I talked to my therapist about it, she goes, "It is not your job to fuel their relationship,
Mm.
because that is a very important relationship she has with her father. You're just setting an expectation for her only to be let down because he might not be that guy." Now, I'm saying this and I'm not meaning anything by anything, just that you can offer suggestions, but you can't be the one to like push that through. So like for
Right.
that, in that instance, I could have said, and I did say, but I had to stop there. I can't keep doing that. He has to want to do that on his own because that's who he is. And she needs to
Yeah.
know the real him, essentially, if that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
I do. It's interesting because, it's even like I found, like I was thinking back through work relationships, right? When I had either two coworkers that maybe didn't get along or see eye to eye, or maybe people that I managed really didn't get along with maybe my boss. And there was,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I was the middle, and the mediator, but if I wasn't there for whatever reason, they had to have that comfort level of being able to go up.
Right,
And
right.
I really feel like when that's not there, so much breakdown in communication happens, which leads to resentment and feelings of, just a total angst.
Mm-hmm.
And I have always tried to be the person that was like, oh, okay, well, let's look at it this way, or just, I don't think this person meant that, or they didn't mean it this way. But over the last, couple of days, I really had to take a hard look at myself and really think, like, is it my job to it's not my job to
It's
make
not your
people get
job.
along.
No.
um but that's really hard.
It is really hard,
Yeah.
but you can, I mean, as a coach, obviously, like you can give them tools to better communicate without a
Yeah.
doubt, but it's
Yeah.
not your job to make sure that, um, A person and B person are getting along. It's kind of like a weird scenario too, because in the work aspect, like, if you have two employees that are not getting along, yeah, you kind of, you can sort of coach them through like whatever, but you can't be the one, forcing it. You have no control over that at
Right.
all.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah. It's interesting. It made me take a hard look at myself, and I was like, I'm gonna talk to Laura about this and see what she has to say.
So what did
Be-
you think? Like when you're looking at yourself, like what is your thought?
um I definitely need to take a step back because I do tend to put myself in the middle thinking I'm doing the right thing. And I think I realized that maybe I'm no, I did realize, not even a maybe, that it's not the right thing. And that, there's relationships in my life that I'm not 100% happy with where they are. And I guess those are the only ones that I can control. Um, and I need
Well,
to.
because you can control yourself, right?
Right, right.
How's
My
our
reaction
relationship?
to a person. What?
I said,
Would
how's
you?
our relationship?
Ours is pretty top notch.
Okay, good. Good.
um,
Mhm.
but no, nobody has ever said like that's not your job. And when there was a lot of, when you have a sick, in my case it was a sick parent, and um there was a lot of resentment about like taking care of things, and feeling kind of alone and by myself, and a lot of it was not really what was happening. It was just a lack of being able to ask for help,
Mhm.
which I had to come to terms with. But I feel like those relationships were strained because I wasn't able to ask for the help I needed, and in return it made me think that those people just didn't care as much as me. You know what I mean? So it's this slippery slope of all of these emotions. But I think the key is you can only control your reaction and your thoughts, and what you decide is an important enough relationship to fight for and or be a part of.
Mhm.
So but it was just something that came up, and I was like, huh, I don't think I've ever thought about not stepping in to try to make it better for somebody. And
Right.
it's
And well, and
interesting.
if you think about like say like my kids for instance, right? When Emily and Matthew, they're just over 2 years apart, were younger and they would fight a lot, you know,
Yeah.
and there's more space between Matthew and Evelyn. And they actually, you know, like as a mom, right? You're like you're referee to
Yeah.
these arguments or
Yeah.
whatever, but you want to give them the tools to be able to resolve it themselves, not just be like, you know, cut it out,
Stop
you know, like
fighting.
this is
Yeah.
like, yeah. But I actually, there were, it was what happened on more than one occasion. I shoved them in a t-shirt together. And it was kind of as a joke, kind of not, but like, no, if you two are going to fight all day, then fine. Sit in the t-shirt together, work it out together. And it was kind of like a funny thing, you know, and I have a picture of it somewhere. You know, I had posted on Facebook or something, and Matthew's like beaming with a smile, and Emily's like pissed off, you know, looking the other way. And it was like, you know, right over by the staircase or whatever. And it was like really funny because, you know, and it was like ironic, you know, like that you're sticking them together. Just like, I don't know if you've ever experienced it at school. There would always be like, you know, some kids that like couldn't stop talking, you know,
Yeah.
and they're talking, you know, talking to each other, passing notes like across the room or whatever. And the teacher like sticks them together. And I remember thinking it was probably like seventh grade. I'm like, well, she's dumb. Why would you do that? You know, but it kind of like it changes the whole dynamic of the situation.
Yeah.
And when, you know, so if it was in my case, it was, you know, Ben and Emily, and they were sort of butting heads, but they have very similar personalities. And that's kind of
Right.
why that happens, you know,
Yeah.
and it can be a power struggle, but sort of like, hey, maybe, you know, the advice that I could give to Ben would be maybe don't talk to her that way.
Hmm.
Maybe, you know, talk to her, you know, at the time I remember I want to say she was probably like 13 or something. And she was, you know, you're becoming like an adult, right? And so
Yeah.
you want to be, you know,
Treated.
yeah, like an
Yeah.
adult. And so
Yeah.
like, you know, that was one of my suggestions. I was like, well, maybe if you know, talk to her like you're on the same level, not down to her, you know,
Yeah.
like include her in a conversation about decisions and things like that. And it turned out like in the end, she wasn't really like crazy about the things that he was deciding for them without including her like in
Getting
the
her input.
decision. And
Okay.
that little thing became super big.
Mm.
And, you know, you develop resentment. Or in Emily's case, what she's famous for is just, you know, being presented with something and then just putting up a giant wall, you know,
Yeah.
and like, yep, nope, not going to
Well,
happen. And
I feel like
yeah,
that's teenagers in general. I mean, I feel like a lot of kids, now, I mean, they've got so much more social pressure than, we did when we were kids,
yeah, but
if,
I'm not even talking about that necessarily. It doesn't matter if I said, you know, if she had a bad experience with sushi, which she didn't, she loves sushi. But if she had a bad experience with sushi, Emily would say, "Nope, I'm never having that again. That's
so
terrible."
she
And she'd
closes
never get
herself
another.
off.
Yeah, like a
Ah,
physical
okay.
brick wall. Yeah,
Yeah.
not necessarily about that. But Emily is my oldest, and I had never experienced that as a mom
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Matthew, totally different kid.
Hmm.
Totally different kid, you know. And so it's interesting, you know, as a
Yeah.
mom and you're going through that kind of stuff.
I have a funny story about,
Yeah,
you said that the teacher sat the two kids that always
yeah.
talked. Okay. So when Nicole and I were like 16 or 17, we worked at the A&P in Blairstown, and it was like
Hmm.
before it was the new A&P, it was the old A&P where the Tractor Supply is. Um, and then the new A&P was built and we got moved over there, and we were like checkout girls, and but we had this one manager, her name was Karen,
Hmm.
and we talked all the time. So she would always, anytime we were scheduled together, like Nicole was checkout number 1, I was checkout number like 18 or something. But we always found a way. We were busy to meet in the middle, and we would still talk. So I'm like, well, you didn't really do anything.
Right.
But it's so funny how different people just try to navigate relationships that are not theirs. I guess that goes to the whole
Well,
point,
that would make sense to me. If you're
yeah,
always talking, like, let's separate you. That
separate,
would have
yeah.
made sense. But I remember, yeah. And yeah, that's interesting.
That's funny.
Is that all you had to say about that?
About my funny story, yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you said relationships to me the other day when we were talking, because this is not what we had planned to
It
talk
is
about this
not
week,
what we had planned.
but
No.
we neither of us like were feeling it.
Yeah.
So I think that when we think about different relationships in our life and like we think about the different elements and clearly like you and Nicole in that moment, like there was nothing that was going to stop you from talking or
No.
connecting because you were compelled to do that. So I think one lesson that I learned in my experience from my marriage to present is that people their effort goes like where their interest is, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
and that goes up from everything from parenting to your siblings, like all of those things, right? We concentrate on the things that we are interested in.
Hmm.
So I struggle with that sometimes too in my daily life. The friggin' kitchen, like that's the last thing that I want to do. So relationships are no different, right?
Yeah.
So um where
I
was I
have to
going
wait.
with
I'm going
that?
to have to
Yeah.
pause right there because I have to share my quote because it goes hand in hand with what you just said.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So my quote says, I've learned that people will forget what you said and people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Maya Angelou said that. And it's true because right to what you're saying, people go where they're interested and that's where they put all of their attention and effort, right? So they'll make you like however you feel about that. That's what you remember.
Right.
People can say a lot of things and they can
That
do a
is your
whole lot
legacy,
of things,
right?
right?
When you're
But
not in
how
the
you,
room, that's what it
yeah,
is. So like I've battled with a lot of things, as you did too, like changing jobs, like all
yeah,
of that, all of those relationships that I had with those people, and then like my ex-boyfriend, and it was like I still don't understand it.
yeah,
I still don't get it, and I may never have those answers, like ever. I don't get it. But I do know that with all of them, if they wanted to, they would. And maybe they'll see,
that's true.
something or whatever. But the way I felt about it for that time, like your mood, like directly affects the way you feel about a certain relationship, right?
Right.
So like it
Yeah.
on both sides, right? So um it's just really confusing sometimes as far as that goes.
Well, and I think too, when a relationship or multiple relationships end very, very suddenly and unexpectedly, and there's no real closure, it's hard to move on and not always have that, well, what what happened? Why did that happen?
Right.
Was it something I did or was it, I mean, it's just, and I think it's human nature to question that. And until you get some sort of resolution out of it, I think there's always going to be questions about, the hell.
Right.
So,
So like to further that point, when you're speaking, when you have these friendships, right? Say
mhm.
friendships, like because we go through different friends in our lives and
Oh yeah.
they serve a purpose in different areas. And, I had a friend that was a coach and then all of a sudden, like, they were gone. So like
Yeah.
it's just when you think about it, and now like if I can step out of the situation, I know, well, clearly they're going through something or
Right.
whatever, like in that particular case, like she must be going through something. It doesn't really have to do with me. And I think it's healthier to think that way than to not, or to blame yourself. Or
Right.
it's
Yeah.
just been really interesting because as I'm writing this book, right, and I'm sort of becoming, I'm almost to the point where I'm like in the present, and a lot of my book has to do with my mother.
Hmm.
And um, your relationship with your mother is the basis of all relationships you will have in your life,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
what do you tell me all the time? Like the people that I'm like in these relationships, what did you just tell me the other day?
I give you so much good advice all the time. You're gonna have to be more specific. What did I
You
tell
said
you?
like I keep fueling these relationships and
Oh,
not setting proper boundaries,
boundaries. Yes.
and that these people are not necessarily like good for me.
Right.
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 So in those two instances, like, the say we take like my last relationship, like I poured in a certain amount And I knew that it wasn't right. I knew I should have trusted my intuition, but the love was so strong
Yeah.
that I kept trying. And then I grew resentful, and then I got mean. But at the same time, I can't blame myself for everything because I wasn't having my needs met. I
Right.
wasn't, I
Well, you
wasn't
weren't
getting
being
the
met
the
halfway.
time.
It wasn't a
It
true
was not
relationship. It was
halfway,
not a,
right?
and no relationship is ever going to be 50-50 all of the time. It just can't be.
Oh, it's
You know,
not.
sometimes your
But
cup is lower or, fuller than whomever, whether it's a sibling, a spouse, a child, whatever. And I think that that's to be expected. But if it doesn't even out in the end, is
right.
when we
There
get
should
all of
be
those feelings.
reciprocation. And
Yeah.
it's not healthy for
Right.
one. But like,
Yeah.
but the thing is that that relationship, all of those things that I was going through as that was ending
Yeah.
sort of triggered some childhood things like that relates back to my mother, the way that, she treated me and the
Mhm.
things that I went through. I was I was more than willing to put up with that stuff that wasn't good for me.
Right.
And as we grow through that, and there's nothing, like there's no hate or anything. I'm just being factual. Like
Yeah.
I I should have expected more for myself. And that goes with other friendships too. A lot of my friendships have been kind of one-sided. And so that is sort of a theme that and the cycle that I'm trying to like break through.
To break. Yeah.
And yeah. So
It's a work in progress. I mean, I think pretty much every podcast we've done so far is it talks all about how everything is it's a work in progress. Every person, every relationship, every decision, everything you manifest, you're all of your redirecting your thoughts, everything.
you're
It
recreating yourself
changes.
like from
Yeah,
scratch.
yeah. But to your point, as much as your friends kind of come and go, I think with that, so do some of your thoughts and your beliefs about yourself. To your point,
Absolutely.
like you are recognizing that you're worth more. And now your expectation for yourself is that you're not going to allow yourself to be treated
Right.
less than what you're worth because you went through things and you have, those feelings now and you kind of know from the relationships of the past what you will and what you won't put up with, I guess,
Right.
is really
Yeah.
important, And but again, it happens, it ebbs and flows all through life when relationship changes and job changes and death and loss and all of it. I think it
Well,
changes
and I
people.
think it has a lot to do with the emotional intelligence of the people that you have said relationships with, right?
I would agree with that.
So
Yeah.
there's definitely some factor in there. There are definitely, like say, like we're talking about like dating, right? Like so you have this like pool of people, and there's a lot. And I remember my old boss would say that he's like, I know what women need. They just want somebody to listen. Well, yes, that is a gateway into
Yeah.
developing a relationship and somebody like listening, but your actions need to match your words.
Right.
Otherwise, and that's like where like he couldn't bring it all the way. And the relationship that just ended, it was kind of the same thing.
Hmm.
And so like when you think about in any relationship, somebody who's just saying yes, or somebody that's not there for you, or like, yes, let's do this on Wednesday, and then they flake out, like there's
Yeah.
all of these factors, like they can't follow through. And if that's, you know, important to you, which it should be,
Right.
then that is saying something. If they wanted to,
They
they
would.
would,
Yeah.
And so, like, I've talked about like when I got divorced and I spent that time alone, and a lot of my focus was trying to find some like single girlfriends that I could like hang out with, and that's kind of
Yeah.
like it's hard. I'm 42. Like, where do
Yeah.
you walk up to some lady in the grocery store because she looks like she might have kids or something or not be married and be like, hey, do you want to hang out? So it's
Can I
hard.
record that? Like, if we're at the shop, right, and you decide that's the route you're going, let me just record it. I just want to, so we
I've
could
got
be
a
like,
better one for you, actually. My cousin was here a couple months ago, or we were talking on the phone, I think. And he's talking, he's like, are you telling me you can't find anybody on those damn apps? Like, what's happening, right? As far as a
Yeah.
relationship goes. And
Yeah.
I apologize if I said this before, but I think it's really hilarious. And he's like, it's just going to happen. He's like, you're going to be at the grocery store on Friday night and drop a jar of spaghetti sauce, and somebody's going to come to your rescue, and it's going to be, and you're going to look up, and it's going to be like, oh, like this magic moment, and then you'll live happily ever after. And I said, I'll take it one further. I go, I'm going to be on the news for like woman seen, Sparta ShopRite throwing jars of spaghetti sauce across the store. But yeah,
Oh, that's so
no, but it's just kind of uh, yeah. I don't even know how we went off on that tangent, but relationships take work, but nothing
funny.
should be that hard. I want to
Yeah.
say, like, if two people are working at it in the same capacity in any regard, it shouldn't be that difficult. And
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
heard that more than once in a lot of scenarios. And I am just really grateful for getting to where I am now, with myself. And what are you going to do? Like, what's your takeaway for your relationship situation that you're talking about? And like, how can you go back to that and
Honestly,
change?
I'm still going to work through that. But my gut says that I'm just going to tell both parties, listen, it's on you. It's on you to figure it out. If you want a relationship, then it's on you to figure out whatever that looks like. That's important enough for both of you. And if you don't, then you don't. But it can't be on my shoulders to make it work
I
because
think that's the
that's
greatest
not
thing to do.
fair. It's not fair to anybody because then I feel like they're just appeasing me because they want me to be happy and it's not really what they want or and
Are
uh,
capable of.
right. So
Yeah.
I mean it's
I
still a
Sorry, go
work in
ahead.
progress.
Good. Okay. So
Yeah.
I have said that to my kids, in fact, when all three of them are arguing, and I said, like, I'm, actually the two bigger ones will get on the on Evelyn about,
Mm.
because they're so much older,
Older.
about like
Yeah.
anything, right?
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, stop. I'm the mom. That's a classic line of mine. I'm the mom. I got it. And Matthew might get upset or whatever, but I'm like, listen. I go, your brother and sister, I appreciate that you're trying to help me out because you don't want me to be stressed out or whatever
Yeah.
it is. I said, but the thing is that you two need to have a good relationship. Like, I'm not always going to be here. And
Yeah.
I want you guys to be together for a long time. I don't want you not to talk or be
Yeah.
resentful about things. And, quite frankly, like my siblings and I, we're not that close. And
Yeah.
I wish that we were closer. And that would maybe give me part of the family dynamic that I feel like I'm missing. But I'm breaking the cycle, in
Yeah.
so many ways going
They
forward.
say
So
They say that's a mom's number one wish is that when she's gone, her children are still close and they still talk to each other and they still, um, are a big part of each other's lives. Um, that's one of the biggest things they say, when they survey moms, like, what is the one thing you want to leave behind when you go? And that is one of the biggest ones. And quite honestly, it's one of the hardest ones because depending on how that childhood was, and everybody has different reminders or different versions of how things went down, right? Um, it kind of skews you, and then you get married, you move on, you have your own family, your priorities change. But I agree with you. I mean, siblings relationships, they are important. They need to
they
be.
are important.
They sure are. They need to be protected. But anyway, all right, so we're wrapping up relationships. I think that
Yes.
was really, yeah, I needed to talk that through, so I'm so glad that you were able to give me some you know, coaching from your point of view about really how to handle that. Because again, it was the first time that somebody had just flat out said to me, it's not your job to make me want to have a relationship with that person.
Who said
You
it to
know,
you? Was it a friend?
it was my daughter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it was my daughter. So she said it's not your job. And she goes, and I'm like, but I want you to be happy. And she's like, and I will be, but it's gotta be my decisions. So which is hard for a mom because
Yes.
I want to make her life easier than, every parent, wants it to be easier than they had or what they just want it
Right.
to
But
be that way.
you letting that go too also gives her the tools to figure it out on her own. And
Right.
that's vital,
Yeah.
because otherwise she's going to get to 30 and not know, like, shit, I've never experienced this before. You
Yeah,
can't
that's true.
shelter them from everything. So good on her part for knowing
Yeah.
herself. And that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Good on her. She's fantastic.
You're learning too. It's good. You know what, Julie? You've never done this before.
Right. No, no, she's my first one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I try to tell her that too. I'm like, I am learning how to be a
It
parent.
was a trial.
I, your brother's got it made. I'm going to know everything possible, when he comes
Yeah.
to these things. But so next week, right?
Yes.
So next week, we're going to dive into how to practice the pause with gratitude, right? So we have talked about that multiple times.
No, we're going to
Um,
practice being present using gratitude, but
oh,
that's
we
fine.
are.
That's good
No, we're
too.
going to
Yeah.
practice being
Yeah.
present using gratitude. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, because we said practice the pause. And then I was like, oh, wait, no, you're correct. I am
Good.
incorrect.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
no, we're going to
okay.
practice
We can
being
pause in
present
there too.
using gratitude. You got it. So that will be, I think that'll be another really good one with
I
a
think
lot
so
of
too.
good insights and ideas.
Oh, well, maybe I get to sit next to you next week then.
We'll see how it goes.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out the blog on myinnerstruggle.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and or if you're a Spotify listener, you can find it there too. And definitely check out Instagram and Facebook and
Yep,
join the community on Facebook. We'll see
perfect.
you next week.
See you later.